just to catch up a bit. So first thing, remember, first, can you all see my screen? Is it good? Okay, cool. So first things first, variables. Remember, you create a variable like this, x equals 2. And then you can then call x again to get its value. So x equals 2. And let me go to my REPL here. So x equals 2. Doesn't have to be 2, can be 3, can be true. It can be a word, it can be a Boolean, and if it's a Boolean, it's going to be true or false. Okay, how do you get an input string? So suppose I wanted to ask the user, suppose I wanted to ask the user what their name was, I would put in input. And then inside the parentheses, I would put my prompt. So this would be, what is your name? And then this would ask the user, what is their name? And we would probably want to store that as a variable. So a equals input, what is your name? So it'll save what the user says as a string. Remember, strings are the things inside quotations. And then we'll print out what a is. So, and actually, let's print out hello plus a, or good afternoon plus a. Okay, and we should run this. It'll ask me what my name is. My name is Nolan. Good afternoon, Nolan. So that's how you use input. Okay, moving on. Oh, sorry. When you want to write something, use the print statement. Inside the parentheses, puts the thing you want to write. So we already did that here. We took the string, and then we added in plus a, which is, what is your name? And so this combines and says, good afternoon, Nolan, and then it prints out the whole string that says, good afternoon, Nolan. Okay, conditionals. So use if to check if a statement is true, like this. So if a is greater than b, print. So now it doesn't have to be a is greater than b. It can be anything that evaluates to a true or false thing. So for example, this could be a is less than b, a minus b is greater than 0, and other things like that. So, oops. So suppose we wanted to show that, suppose you had a is 3, and b is 2. Okay? Oops, I deleted that. A is 3, b is 2. Okay, so that'll be true. And so this whole thing will evaluate to true, and then it'll print out a is greater than b. But suppose b was 3 and a was 2. A minus b is not greater than 0. So it's going to evaluate to false. It's going to run to this line after. Not the print statement, but this next line here. So that's how an if statement works. And yeah, don't forget to indent after the colon. There are 2 types of loops. Sorry, I forgot to start recording. Let me start that up real quick.
I'm recording, Nolan.
Okay, cool. There are 2 types of loops, while loops and for loops. So while loops continue while the condition is true. They look like this. While a is greater than b. Again, doesn't have to be a greater than b. It's anything that evaluates to a Boolean expression. A Boolean is true or false, okay? And do something. For loops continue while they're in range. So write them like this, for I in range. Okay, so while loop, let's take a look at an example of that. While true. This will always run because there's no way true is anything but true. But say we had a condition such as x is greater than y. And then we added 2. And then we subtracted from x. Well, that will decrease and eventually it will stop. So that's one way to use a while loop. It runs always when this condition inside the little parentheses is true. Furthermore, we have for loops. So this will run 10 times. And one thing to note about this is that it starts at 0, goes up to 9. So that's 10 in total, but it's one less than you might think because counting starts at 0. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we can use this to do something repeatedly. So let's say we wanted to print out, hello 10 times. Hello. This will run 10 times. Hello, 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 etc. So this is a way to print out a consistent number of times, or just run something a consistent number of times. Last time we touched on functions. Let's go over functions really quickly. So first, what is a function? It's a repeatable block of code. What does that mean exactly? So we can, we can substitute in, a function for a few lines of code. And so we can use this to remove duplicate code. So wherever you see a function, the code within the function replaces the function. It's a little complicated, so let's give an example. A function is a repeatable block of code. So suppose we had the code on the right. You see this? X equals 1, print hello world, y equals 2, print x, print y, print x plus y. Pay special attention to these last 3 lines. And then since x equals 3, y equals 1, print x, print y, print x plus y. So if we wanted to edit that, say, it's redundant. We have 2 different things here. So we can instead make it a lot simpler and have a single line of code. So instead of have print x, print y, print x plus y, let's create a function. Okay, let's call it add num. So num1, num2, it takes in those as an input. Num1, num2, num1 plus num2. So this helps us clean up our code because now instead of saying print x, print x plus y, we can just say add num, which replaces a few lines of code. And it's not only an efficiency thing. Suppose you had an issue with one of these. Let's say you wanted it instead of x plus y to be x minus y for some reason. You would only have to add num once in this section here, instead of having to edit it below multiple times, if that makes sense. Any questions so far? Please put them in chat. Okay, I don't see any questions so far. I'm going to keep moving on. I'll answer any if I see them. Why is this important? So, as I just said, it makes your code easier to read and more organized. And it also helps you make changes. So if you change one thing, you don't have to go through and change it in 100 different spots if you have the same copy and pasted code in 100 different spots. Because instead you have a function that replaces those copy and pastes. And a function, you only have to edit it once and it edits it in every location versus copy and paste. You have to manually go through and change each thing. So here's the basic syntax of a function. So we say def function name do something. So, for example, here's one. Def print hello 5, for I in range 5, print hello, and then print hello 5 to call it. Oops. Looks like my editor is on the fritz. So while we do that, let's take a look back at this. It is called print hello 5, for I in range 5, print hello. So I'm creating a for loop here, and this will run 5 times. Also, note the construction of the function. So def tells the code machine, the IDE, the web page. It tells it, hey, we're about to make a new function. So pay attention, and then we write the name of the function here. You write parentheses, and you write a colon. Okay, so for I in range, and we're running this 5 times. Print hello. Okay, so this is our code. Now, if I run this, what do you think will happen? well, nothing will happen really, because we haven't called it. It's really important to remember this. This code will not run unless you call it. So this saves what this right here stores what the code means, but until you actually call it, it won't do anything. So if I have print hello 5 here, and I run this, now it will call print hello 5. But if I didn't have this, print hello 5 would just, you could call it, but it's never actually been called. So we run this, hello, 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 hello. And let's follow the flow of this real quick, the control loop. So we go print hello 5. Okay, so it reads this. It says, oh, I know what that means. It's defined here. Def is short for define. Fun fact. So print hello 5. So it goes, takes a look, reads the definition. For I in range 5, print hello. So it sees this. So when it gets to here, it says, okay, reads this, goes here, and then it cycles through this 5 times. And that's how you get this. And if we had another line of code afterwards, say print goodbye, this would run after the function is completely done. So far, so good. Any questions, thoughts, any concerns? Okay, moving on. Calling a function, simply write the function name in, followed by parentheses and the input, and you're good to go. Some examples of this are print, and then you can put print and then your input in the parentheses. Sometimes they don't need any input, so nothing goes in the parentheses. I'll explain a bit more about inputs in a little while. Function control flow. Okay, so def print hello 2. For I in range 2, print hello. So we're going to start out, we're going to take a look at this. This will understand how the control flow works a bit better. So we have this function, print hello 2. It's going to print hello twice, okay? So we start good morning. We say hello 2, and then we say goodbye. But so first we start out at this line, print good morning. And then it reaches hello 2. So it immediately circles back to the top. It says, oh, okay, hello 2. Let's substitute hello 2 for this code here. Then it sees for I in range 2, print hello. So it prints hello once. It's not out of range yet, so it goes again, prints it again, so it prints it twice. So after that's done, it says, okay, the code is done, function is done. We go down, and we go to the last line of code. So what will happen is it'll go, good morning, hello, hello, goodbye. And we can actually prove this by putting it to IDE, the code compiler, the code machine. And let's try that. So the quotations are a little peculiar on this. And see, good morning, hello, hello, goodbye. Great, so moving on from that, here are some practice problems. So first, create a function that prints the phrase hello world 7 times. And second, create and call a function that prints the result of 10 times 47 times 3 divided by 1 minus 6. So first, let's start with the first one. And please code along with me while I do these. So open up your REPL.it if you haven't already. And let's get started in a minute. Okay, I'm assuming you all have your REPL.it open right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this, create and call a function that prints the phrase hello world 7 times. So how do we create a function that says hello world 7 times? First things first, we have to define the function. So what does that mean? What is the first keyword I should write? Anybody going to answer in chat? Exactly, it's def. Def, short for define. So we're about to define a function, and we want to say hello world 7 times. So let's say hello 7. Parentheses to show that we're making a function. After the function name, then a colon, and then okay, def hello 7. So what are we going to say? We're going to say hello world, but we're going to say it 7 times. So we're going to use a for loop here. For I in range 7. I forgot my colon. Print hello world. Okay, if we run this, it should work. So I made a mistake here. Can anybody catch what I made? I forgot to actually call the function. So I defined it here, but I never called it. So instead, I have to call it here. This should be lowercase. It's a convention thing. It's not a strict rule. But yeah, so I call hello 7. It calls hello world 7 times. Excellent. Yeah, exactly. I didn't call it. Okay, and second, create and call a function that prints the result of this big, nasty math equation. So real quick, def calculate. We put this in, and then we print the result of that. So when you put print around it, it's going to evaluate everything inside before it actually prints it out. So this should give us the answer. And I forgot to call it again. So remember to actually call your functions. And that will tell us 1404.0. So cool. Moving on. Return statements. So a return statement gives a value from a function, and then it stops the function. So what does that mean exactly? It allows us to take the value from the output of a function and create a variable with it, or use it in a calculation. It looks something a little like this, or this. So there's an issue with the second one here. And it's really important to remember this. All code in a function stops after the return. So you see how there's a print 3 here? If we were to actually type this in, def give number return, let's do it. So this code here, the print 3 will not run. And the reason for that is because print 3 is after the return statement. So it just, the function terminates, it stops. So if I wanted to, for example, this should give 5, right? Let's go through the control flow of why. It goes here. So it reads this line. It says, oh, give number, okay. Goes back up, sees it gives 3, stops. So 3 plus 2 is 5. But it doesn't print 3. So 5. But if I put this print before, it will run because it's before the return statement, so it's still running. And it'll go 3 and 5. So far, so good? Any questions? Okay, moving on. So return keyword in a function. So here's an example. Def function name, do something, and then return result. Def math prob. A equals 7 times 6 divided by 5 minus 6. Print done, return A. Okay, so what does this do right here? Let's figure that out. So first it solves this math equation and assigns it to A. Then it prints out done because it's finished the calculation and it returns A. So what does return mean exactly? Well, it basically means this whole function evaluates to A, or the value you put in the return statement. So if I were to take this, I could actually, print out math prob, and this will return whatever A is, if that makes sense, because it sees math prob, goes here, calculates this, prints out done, and then returns A. These quotations are wrong. So it goes here and it sees A. So what does that mean for us? When it sees the A, it says, okay, return it, stop. That's what my return value is going to be. So this whole thing evaluates to A. So what's that mean for this problem? It's going to print out done, it's going to print out A. And if we run this, done, then A is 2.4000, etc., etc. Okay. Printing. So printing writes to the console and it returns absolutely nothing. So printing, we've been using that a lot to check things, and it allows us to visually see what the value is, but it doesn't actually return anything. So if I were to say, if I were to check the value of a print statement, it wouldn't have any because it's not returning anything. But if I return something, it writes something to the writes nothing to the console, and it returns something. And so when it returns something, it sets its value to something. Okay, I know that's a little confusing, so let's go over some practice problems. So code along with me. Create a function that prints 3, then returns the int 5. So create a function that prints 3. So def, what are we going to call this? Practice problem 1. Prints out 3. Note how it said 3 in quotations because it's a string, not an int. And then it returns 5. Okay. And I have to call my function. So run this, and it prints out 3. Note how it didn't actually return 5, if that makes sense. Or it didn't print out 5, but it did print out 3, because returning something doesn't write to the console. Printing something does. However, if we were to check the value of this, let's say we print practice problem 1, and we ignore this print statement here, it'll say it's 5 because that's the actual value of it. Okay. And the control flow of this would be quite literally, okay, sees practice problem 1, goes up here, reads that, says, I remember what that is, print 3, okay, that's the first thing, return 5. So it'll print 3, and then it'll return 5. And second, print the result of the previous function plus 3. Okay, so we have to print the result of the previous function. So that's this function plus 3. So print plus 3. So what do you guys think this is gonna, what do you think the console is gonna look like after I run this? Type it in chat, please. Any thoughts? Yeah. Okay, well, let me show you what happens. So and I'll explain it as I go along. So practice problem 1. So it reads this line, says, okay, I remember that means, let's go look at the definition. It goes down, it says, okay, I'm gonna print out 3. It does that, okay. And then after that, it returns 5. So first, we already know it's gonna print 3, first thing. Next, second thing, it's gonna go return 5. So this whole thing becomes 5. So just imagine that as a 5 in your head. So print 5 plus 3, so that's 8. So it's going to print out 3, and this is going to print out 8. And look at that, and that's what it does. Okay. And now I want you all to take a moment, and I want you to code these real quick. So yeah, let me know when you guys are done. And you can always ask any of us for help. Anybody with the Paly Robotics at the end of the name. Okay, so how far along is everybody right now? Okay. And how many of you need more time? Okay, let me rephrase that. Does anybody need more time? If it's embarrassing to type it in chat for everyone, just you can always privately message me.
Let's give them a minute more.
Okay.
Again, if you have an error or have some question, you can DM or ask any of us for help, and we can help you.
Okay. It's been a minute. I'm gonna move on. So we're gonna go over parameters real quick. So what is a parameter? Known informally as an input. These are the values you put into your function, and they go between the parentheses. So normally in the function, you use the parameters to do something with the values. Some functions, like print, use the parameters to print things. Other functions don't need parameters. So let's take a look. So here's an example one. Def function name, A, B, C. Note, this is really important, okay? You can have A, you can have B, you can have C, you can have as many parameters as you want. They can be any type you want. They don't all have to be the same type. But you can have 1, you can have 0, you can have 100,000, but they're all parameters, okay? So that gives functions the level of flexibility. Each time you call the function, it's going to be the same size. But whenever you create a new function, you can say exactly how many parameters you want. So and here's an example on the right. Def add A, B, C. And this will add the result of A plus B plus C. And it returns that. Okay, so some more practice problems. Code out add subtract functions. Okay, let's take a look at how to do that. Add and subtract problems. So def add. How are we going to do this? So I've already created the function, right? But we need, how many parameters should I have? Well, let's say, for the sake of this, let's say there are 2 numbers. So I need 2 parameters, right? Say num1, num2. And we want to return the value of num1 plus num2. So that's just that. It's pretty simple. So what do you think is going to happen if I say x equals 1, y equals 2? And then I say add x plus y. Even though, sorry, not x plus y, x and y. So even though x doesn't match num1, it's still in the position that num1 is in. So order matters to these guys. So x matches to num1, y matches to num2. It's going to output num1 plus num2. And what do you guys think that's going to be? I'll let you take a wild guess. All right, nobody's guessed, but it's 3. I hope you remember your basic math. And so I never called print around this. So remember, this will return a value, but it won't actually print it. And 3, that's the value we get. Okay, we need to make one that does subtraction as well. And let's follow the code, the control flow this time. So def subtract num1, num2. These can be anything you want. They can have any name, just so long as you call them by the same name inside the function. Say A and B this time. Return num1 minus num2. And then, suppose we wanted to check that. Let's say y x this time. Okay, so control flow. How is this going to work? Well, first we need to remember to actually change the values of the functions. That is embarrassing. But first thing is it's going to run. It says 1. So how did we get there? Okay, so it says subtract yx. Takes a look here. Boom. Goes to subtract, okay? It sees y is in the A spot, x is in the B spot. So it takes the value of y. Let's say that's, we know it's 2. It takes the value of x, it's in the B spot, so b is 1. So it goes 2 minus 1. That's 1. Okay. Return that value. So then this becomes 1. So that's print 1. Oops. Create a function which takes your number, or sorry, code a function that takes your name as an argument and prints, hello, your name. So let's do an example. Def name greeting. I actually did this one in the beginning, but let's go over how we do that again with an input this time. So here I would put in username, and then we'd say print hello plus the username. And so the username can be anybody's name, just so long as you remember to just so long as you remember that you need to call it. So we call name greeting. So my name is Nolan, so I'm going to say hello, Nolan. And that should give me hello, Nolan. I should have added a space here, but let's follow that control flow. So it goes Nolan. It says name greeting Nolan, goes here. Okay, username is Nolan. Print hello plus Nolan. Okay, print hello, Nolan. Makes sense for everyone? Any questions at all? Okay, moving on. Takes your name as an argument, prints hello, name. So sorry, I hope everybody understands how to do that. You've also been coding that in your REPL.it, right? These practice problems. How do you add the space? So I added a space at the end of the hello. So that way there's a little gap in between. And if you take a look, hello, Nolan, see?
Question, can I call name greeting more than once?
Yes, you can. So let's say I wanted to call name greeting again. Totally could. And see, instead of having to, I guess this isn't a great example. So say, let's add another line here. So print welcome, print hello plus username. So, and let's say we have that, 5 or 6 times or something like that. It's going to be, and then let's say, oh, I actually want to say, so let's say I made this mistake I did a little earlier where I forgot the space, and I run this. Oh, yes. So let's say I do this, I forget the space, right? Welcome, hello, Nolan, welcome, hello, Nolan, welcome, hello, Nolan. Okay, so let's say I forgot the space. Well, I don't want to have to go in here, oh, okay, gotta add that, gotta add that. So we can instead call this function here 3 times. And see, look at that. This takes up much less space for the same result. And this is the power of functions, because you can also edit them. So let's say I forgot that space, and I had to redo it and go through each one. Boom. Add the space, does it to all of them. Okay. Create a function which takes a number, multiplies it by 5, subtracts 2, and returns the result. So it takes a number, multiplies it by 5, subtracts 2, and returns the result. So def calculate takes a number, let's say number, multiplies it by 5, number, I forgot the colon, number times 5 minus 2. Let's put this in parentheses just to make, so parentheses aren't only useful for helping set up the correct way you want the equation written. It also makes it so that the viewer can read it a lot easier without having to go through the order of operations. So def calculate number times 5 minus 2. Okay, so we need to return this. And that should be it. Let's test it. So print, calculate, and let's put in 10. And you all are following along with the REPL, I hope, and are able to do this yourself. Okay, let's check that. 10 times 5 minus 2 is 48. Looks like it checks out. Okay, next. Code out a function with parameters a, b, c, d that returns the following. A divided by b times c minus d. Okay. Def. And then we say, let's just say a weird equation. Takes an a, b, c, d. And it returns the following. A divided by that's, yeah. Okay, so return a divided by b times c minus d. Okay, so let's say I run that. What numbers do you guys think I should put in? Like, let's just do some random numbers. I guess those aren't very random, but that's okay. And we print this. Okay, control flow. I forgot the colons. Okay, control flow. So he goes, weird equation. So it says print. Okay, what's inside of it? Weird equation. Okay, takes a look. This is how it's defined. So 3 is A, 5 is B, 3 is C, 10 is D. Return A divided by B times C minus D. And so it does that calculation, puts that here, prints that out, and we get negative 8.2. Cool. Okay, moving on. Create a function that takes in 4 parameters, returning a Boolean true or false based on if the first 2 multiplied together is equal to the sum of the last 2 parameters. So first 2 multiplied together. So let's start writing that. So def for inputs based on if the first 2 multiplied together is equal to the sum of the last 2 parameters. Okay, so A, B, C, D. And remember, you can have as many parameters as you want. So I could have a million here. It wouldn't make sense to have it here, but I could theoretically. And they're always separated by commas. I think I forgot to mention that last time. Okay, so if A times B is equal to, remember, double equals, we use that to check something. Singular equals, we use to see, we're assigning that, is equal to C plus D, return true. Else, if it's not true, what's it have to be, guys? False. Now, here's a fun trick here. You see how I have a bunch of extra lines of code here? We can actually get rid of these. We can just return this value right here. Because this evaluates to Boolean value. And if it's true, it's true. If it's false, it's false. Okay. We don't need, we can just output the direct Boolean value without checking, is it true? and then if it's true, then then return true, because we can just say return true or false. Okay, so a times b equals c plus d. Let's run this, and we need to call it. So 4 inputs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Will this return true or false, guys? Anybody gonna answer, or is it a little difficult? Okay, moving on. It's gonna return false because 1 times 2 is not equal to 3 plus 4. I run this, and I forgot to print it. So not only did I forget to call it, I forgot to print it. So it's gonna print false. Now let's suppose I had 1, 2. This was 1 and 1. This would print true, because that adds up correctly. Okay, and finally, some independent problems for you guys to do on your own. So please take a moment, do these, and ask us if you have any questions at all, and type in chat when you're done.
Let us know when you finished all 4 questions in the chat.
Okay, is anybody done yet? If not, how much more time do you think you'll need? Okay.
Let's give them another 5 minutes max.
Okay, so 5 minutes will be on the clock. Okay, I'm gonna give it another 1 or 2 minutes. How's everybody coming along? Are you done? Are you close to done? All right, nice job to everybody who's finished so far. We're going to be moving on shortly. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. All right, good job. Okay, moving on. Let's make a rock, paper, scissors game, everyone. So you're going to be doing this against the computer. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to make a single player rock, paper, scissors game where the player inputs rock, paper, or scissors. Then the computer randomly chooses one of the 3 options. And finally, the computer prints out who wins. So for the first step, how are we going to do this? How do we generate random values? So when you use Python, you can import other code in order to use it. So we're going to be using the random library. So what that means is we're essentially stealing somebody else's pre-made code that they've allowed to be used. It's called the random library. So let's take a look at that real quick. So this tells us, this is a little complicated, but basically it's a bunch of functions that we can use to use in our game. So there should be a function in here that I'll show you in a second. So sorry, first we're going to type in import random. And we're going to use this to generate the rock, the paper, the scissors that the computer is going to create. So at the top of your REPL page, outside any functions, write down import random. And it should look like that. And this is a code along, so please open up your IDEs, start typing in what I type in. Okay, so type in import random. That tells us we're getting pre-made code. So let's see what that looks like. Random. Okay. So next step is we're going to be using the random function to make sure that the computer will randomly choose rock, paper, or scissors. So using the random.randint low value, high value function, we can get a random number between the low and high value inclusive. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we can generate a random number from 1 to 3, and then we map that and use that in order to find rock, paper, or scissors. So real quick, here's the little model of how this will work. So we put it in, we call the random number generator. It'll go 1, 2, or 3. Rock, paper, or scissors. And so we're going to call that using random.randint. So first, let's create a function. Let's call it generate computer hand. We call random.randint. And we're going to put 1 to 3 here as anywhere in the range of 1 to 3. And then we're going to say, first let's create a variable that says rand equals random.randint 1, 3. And then we're going to say rand equals, sorry, if rand is equal to 1, return, and remember the diagram that said 1 is rock, 2 is paper, 3 is scissors. It's in order. 1 is rock, 2 is paper, 3 is scissors. So rand equals 1, that means we're returning rock. If rand equals 2, we return scissors. The strings, make sure they're strings. And if rand equals 3, return, oops, I'm sorry, that should be paper. And if rand is 3, return scissors, because it's rock, paper, scissors. Okay, so it's important in all forms of programming, it's important to make sure that you can check your work. So how are we going to do that? Let's call it. And if I built this right, it should give us a random output. So it should say rock, it should say paper, or it should say scissors. And let's see. Okay, so rock, so that seems like it's working. Rock, okay. Rock. So it looks like I've made a mistake here. Or I was just really unlucky. Looks like I was just really unlucky. Paper, so it goes rock, paper, and scissors. So please copy this down. Copy this down while I, oh, wait a minute here. Copy this down. This is important to have. Not, don't copy this print statement because we just use that to verify. But copy down everything else. And if you have any questions, message me or any other member of the robotics team. Okay, I'm assuming that everybody has like copied down. If not, please message me, tell me to slow down. But we're going to be moving on now. So next step is we need to get the user's input. So use the function input, and then you put in your text there. So the string is what it'll ask the user. So rock, paper, or scissors. And dot lower, so we're going to add a dot lower to the end. Makes it all lowercase, guaranteeing we don't have any errors where you type a capital R or a capital letter somewhere and it says it's not rock, but it is rock. So for example, here we go. So def get user input. So first things first, user in equals user input rock, paper, or scissors. And then we put on this dot lower. Dot lower essentially says it's lowercase. So user in equals input rock, paper, scissors, dot lower. Okay, so first thing we do, we say we need to actually, oh wait, I'm sorry, I think we just save it here and we're done. So we just return user in. Okay, now let's check and see if this works. Also, we need a space here. Space in order to give a little bit of a buffer so it doesn't look like it's two words squeezed together. So let's run this, get user input. So rock, paper, scissors, I say rock. Okay, cool, it works. So why don't you copy down what I have so far, this new function. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions about how it works, why it works? You don't understand? If you want me to go faster, slower, just, yeah.
If you get an error at any point in the way, you can, again, just ask any of us for help, and we can help resolve that error.
Okay, now the tricky bit. So we need a function that evaluates who wins. So we're going to have it, so here, let's get to the explanation. Have it output either player 1 or player 2 based on who wins first. And second, use if statements to check each possibility, then return the correct winner. So if it's a tie, return -1. So check every case, right? So how are we going to do this? First things first, create a function, def evaluate hands. So what's going to happen is it's going to take in an input, two inputs actually, hand 1 and 2. So then all we have to do is say if hand 1 equals hand 2, return -1, because that means it's a tie, right? If it's rock and it's rock, or it's scissors and scissors or paper and paper, it's a tie. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say else, else if hand 1 equals rock and that's not the correct and 2 equals paper. Okay, so who wins in this one? Does person 1 win or does person 2 win? Person 2. paper beats rock. So we return 2, not print. Let's copy and paste that. And let's switch it around. Because we need every case, not just rock and paper, but paper and rock. And let's copy and paste these and change these slightly. Unfortunately, you're going to have to manually do this. You can't really use functions too well. But this is what it should look like. Okay, and this should have covered almost every situation. And then we'll put an else here for if the user inputs something wrong. And we'll say return print error, return 0. Okay, so let's test this now. Evaluate hands, say rock, paper. Oh, I forgot to print it. 2. Okay, so player 2 wins because paper beats rock. Cool. Player 1 should win this one. And player 2 should win this one. And boom. Okay, so any questions? If not, please copy this down. And if you don't understand the core principles, let me try and explain again. Basically, we check if the value is this, and we check if the other one is this, and if they're both if they both match this case, then we return the person who wins. If they're the same, we return -1, and if not, then it's not any possible combination, which is rock, paper, or scissors. So we print error and we return 0. Questions? Anything? I'm going to give you another minute to copy this because it is a lot of logic. So be sure you have it down. And be sure you understand why it works. Is there a better way to write than just to write every different outcome? So there are a few shortcuts you could take, but in the end, for example, you could make a function that says, if it is rock and paper, return blank, otherwise return blank. And you could write that, and you could do stuff like that. Unfortunately, there's not a great way to circumvent the necessity of writing out every outcome. I suppose you could write half of them, check if you win, and then otherwise you have to lose. Check half of them. You check the ones that win. You check if you're tying, and if you're not tying or winning, then you have to be losing. So you could remove about half of them that way. But this is definitely the easiest to just visualize and conceptualize. Okay, everybody have that close to copied down? Any issues, questions? No, more time. Okay. Yeah, it's a fair chunk of code. Okay, do you guys still need more time? Okay. I'll give it another, let's say 3 minutes, and then if you still need time by then, I'll extend it to 5. If you are done, can you go? If you're done, I'd recommend I'll explain what the next thing you need to do is. You'll need to combine everything. So try and figure that out yourself. So when you finish, actually, try and figure out how to tie everything together. And then in about 5 minutes, I'll go over how to do that. Are you asking if people are confused, or are you saying that you are confused? Ah, okay. Is anybody still working on the um, copying down the logic? Anybody? Okay, I'm gonna assume not. Okay, so moving on, we need to tie this all together. So let's go back to the presentation. So we need to make a game runner. We need to make a function that pieces everything together. So it first makes a function that asks for the user's input. We got that. Second, we need to generate the computer's random hand. Third, we need to find the winner based on both players' hands. So we're going to create a new function called game runner. First thing, we're going to say get user input. And we're going to say player hand equals get user input. And then we're going to say computer hand equals get what was it? Generate computer hand. And we're going to make it so that you can actually see what the computer puts out, because otherwise it'd be really weird to play rock, paper, scissors and only see one of the two hands. So we're going to say computer hand equals, print computer hand. Then we're going to put in evaluate hands. And 1 and 2. Okay, and then we're going to say the winner equals the winner equals whoever is the winner from evaluate hands. And then we check if winner equals, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be hand 1, hand 2, that should be player hand, computer hand. So we see if winner equals 1, 1 is the first person, so we say if winner equals 1, we say print the player wins. If the winner, else if winner equals 2, print the computer wins. Else if winner equals -1, print it's a tie. So just to clarify, 1 is the first person, and the first person's hand is the player. 2 is the second person's hand, so it's the computer. -1 means it's a tie, and else print error. I have been programming for a few years now, and I still get tripped up by certain equal signs. Okay, so game runner. And here we go. So this is the last hurdle. It's really just playing the game. So it asks rock, paper, scissors. I say rock. Rock. It's a tie. Okay. And let's see if it works. Scissors. Computer wins. Okay, we're done. Huzzah. So if you haven't got this last bit of code yet, be sure to copy it down. This is really what ties everything together. Right, and so if you want to run this repeatedly, the last bit of code you'll need to do is you'll need to put it into a while loop. I mean, this won't ever stop, so you'll have to just close the browser to stop it. But it's fun, so game runner. And huzzah, it should look like this. Rock. Scissor, error, error. Okay, we have an issue. So let's figure out what the issue is. Rock, paper, scissors, rock, scissor. Scissor. I see. So we said scissor here, but it should have been scissors. So if you haven't noticed that, I would change that to repeat if you have for the generated computer hand, it should be return scissors, not scissor. Odd, I'm not tying. There we go. Okay, but could you go down on the code? I'm sorry. Yes. So some modifications you could do is, for example, you could print the computer hand, and you could also print, you could print a nice message like the computer puts computer hand. So, for example, the computer's hand is plus computer hand. That is in the wrong place, isn't it? Computer's hand is scissors, the player wins, and so on and so forth. Right. So functions are the crucial thing here, because otherwise you'd have large segments of code that. So functions do three main things. They help break up the code to make it more readable. They help remove repetition in your code, and they make it easier to edit. So they help make your code more readable by giving a defined name to it that should help explain what it does. So in this case, without functions, we'd have a big issue, because we'd have multiple different functions that are all kind of lumped together, and you can't tell where one stops and one starts. Okay, so how's everybody doing on this? Do you guys need more time to copy? Do you not understand it? Do you need help with anything? Just type in chat. Main thing I'm looking for is how much longer do you guys think you're going to need? Okay. And if anybody needs to see a part of the code I've scrolled over, whatever, just tell me where to scroll. Is that better? Okay, your code says error does not show the winner. Okay, let's take a look. So, did you remember to edit? So I made a mistake here. I said scissor instead of scissors. Check if that is scissors, and not make sure that's scissors with an S, not scissor. Just one scissor. Okay. I'm gonna wrap this up right now. So, if you haven't finished yet, I'll give you 1 or 2 more minutes. But for everybody else who has finished, let me show you a bonus challenge. So take this link. You can look at this at a later date from the Zoom recording. But basically what this does is it's another presentation on how to make a text-based adventure game if you're interested. Yeah, and so it's how to make one. It's pretty cool. I'd recommend you take a look if you want more of this type of content. Anybody need anything else to copy from this from the code? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Well, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you coming here and getting exposed to the field of robotics and programming. So thank you.
We're going to keep this on for a little bit for people who still have questions and are conversing with counselors. So you can feel free to leave now. anyone else in the process of getting help? Counselors, is anyone asking you for help right now?
No.
Let's just wait for Aiden. All right, cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for coming.